So welcome everyone to the Essex County Field Naturalist Club May meeting. My name is Corey Reno. I'm the club vice president. So thank you for joining us tonight. It's my pleasure to introduce tonight's special guest presenter, Brandi Bechard. Brandi is the founder and co-owner of Ground Culture, an ecological foodscaping company based in Windsor and Essex County. She will be presenting on increasing the ecological function and food growing capacity of your outdoor space. After the presentation, we'll open it up to questions. You can just raise your hand within Zoom. We'll have you unmute your mic and ask it, or if you'd prefer, you can just add a question to the chat function within Zoom, and we'll get those questions answered for you. Without further ado, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Brandi. So we'll swap it out here and get Brandi set up.
Thank you, Corey. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me this evening. I'm going to jump right in and share my screen. And I want to give a little disclaimer before I dive into the gardening material that I'm living out in the county and our internet's very slow. So if there's any lags, just bear with me, and hopefully when it does pause, it's on a really hilarious face I'm making, so it's at least entertaining. And let's see if this works. Just give it a second here. All right, can everybody see this? I can't see you. I've hidden your Corey, do you just want to say, yeah, we're good?
Yeah,
if you can see my
great.
Full screen?
Everything looks great.
Awesome. Okay, all right. Well, this presentation is on growing food at home and little ways you can just increase the biodiversity of your outdoor space. Just do a little bit of introduction first, even though Corey gave me a lovely introduction, so thank you. Again, my name is Brandi. My company is called Ground Culture. We specialize in vegetable gardens, ecological landscapes. We provide designs, builds, and maintenance. We also have a garden club, which teaches folks how to grow food. And it's a season-long program, walks you step by step through setting up a garden to sowing and planting your seeds and plants to harvesting. And then we also promote gardening through education and talks like this and workshops and events. Unfortunately, a lot of those have been put on hold because of COVID, but I'm really stoked about being able to still provide virtual presentations like this. So thanks so much for having me. Let's jump right in. Today's topics, we're going to be talking about basic needs for growing food. We're going to be talking about vegetable gardens and edible landscapes. If that's a new term to you, don't worry. And we're going to be describing that a little bit more into detail. And we're just going to briefly touch upon creating your own garden plan. So before we start, I always find it a really helpful practice to just think about your own garden space at home. Think about a spot that you have in your yard that's maybe underutilized, or maybe you have an existing garden, or maybe there's a spot that you've always wanted to put a garden. And that way, as we're talking and learning about these topics, you can actually apply what you're learning to that space that you have in your mind. So this is an example of a project we just wrapped up last week. This is the before picture. So the client came to us and the words they used to describe their space was uninspiring, underproductive, and they said it was a little bit of an awkward space. Awkward to cut the grass, awkward to look at. They just didn't really know what to do with it. So with some planning and some design and a couple days of some shoveling, we built them a vegetable garden. And around the perimeter, there's native species, also some non-native species, but nothing that's invasive or too much of an opportunistic plant whatsoever. We try and plant plants that attract pollinators and at least contribute to the local biodiversity, even if it's not necessarily a pollinator plant. Often they harbor other beneficial insects for your garden. And that together creates a beautiful and a more functional space. So let's talk about what types of food we can grow at home. here in Essex County, we have such a unique climate. We have quite an extended growing season, and even in the wintertime with a little bit of season extension, we can still kind of extend the harvest or kind of increase our shoulder seasons a little bit. So we can grow all sorts of fruits, of course, vegetables. We can also grow nuts. I manage a community healing garden in Lakeshore, and we have a little hazelnut grove there. We can grow grains, herbs, of course, flowers, and I even grow a little bit of my own medicine at home. Of course, one medicine comes to mind, but I also grow feverfew and a couple other herbs that I use for headaches and all sorts of stuff. So the possibilities to grow your own foods and fruits and nuts and medicines at home are virtually endless here. So let's talk about the basic needs of a garden. Now, this might seem super obvious to you. These are things that we learn in grade school about the basic needs of a vegetable garden, but I promise if you get the right ratio or the right formula of all of these things mixed together, you'll have a foolproof garden. Lots of people blame not being able to grow things on not having a green thumb, and I truly believe the idea of a green thumb is a myth. It's a learned thing, just like I learned how to play piano. I wasn't born with the ability to grow food, I learned it. So if you can kind of get all of these little, the sun, water, soil, and seeds and plants right, then you can grow food at home, I promise. So let's start with the sun. Vegetable gardens in particular need minimum 6 hours of sunlight a day. If you have less than that, there are some shade tolerant crops, but you might want to look into growing more native species, which are actually adapted to growing in understory conditions in the forest, and many of which are edible. But if you're growing an annual vegetable garden, we're aiming for 6 to 8 hours of daylight a day. You want to build your garden that faces the south or faces the west. This doesn't mean putting your garden in the south part of your yard. It might even mean putting it in the north part of your yard. It has to be opened up towards the south. So anything south of your garden, there shouldn't be anything tall like a tree or a building that would cast shade in the west either, because then you're going to be blocking out your afternoon sun, which is the strongest sun of the day. So you can see on the right-hand side of the screen here, I have first, second, and third choice for garden locations. A first choice would be full sun and close to the house. Second would be if it gets morning shade, not ideal, but better than afternoon shade. You don't really want anything far from the house, because a garden that's far from the house, out of sight, out of mind, right? If you're not visiting it very often, then you're more susceptible to weeds, pests, disease, and just overgrowth in general. And then my last choice would be putting it somewhere where it would receive only morning sun, but no afternoon shade. So often beside the house and between the house and the fence is not a great spot for the garden, because those tall structures will block out the sun. All right, let's move on to soil. Arguably the most important part of the garden. Our ethos here is to feed the soil, not the plants. So a lot of people ask me about fertilizer. And although annual vegetables are intensive feeders, and we do recommend certain fertilizers like worm castings and compost, and we even use a granular bone and feather meal based fertilizer, we really want to focus on building soil health over time. And you do that by, well, I have a whole slide on that. So there's many ways you can build soil health at a time, but I just want to remind you that you can do this in both raised beds and in-ground gardens. Lots of people in Essex County live on clay. Unless you're out in Leamington, then you might be lucky enough to live on the little sand streak. But no matter if you live on clay or sand, you can increase your soil health over time by following these steps. So you want to add organic matter to the soil. The best way to add organic matter is to add well-rotted manure or compost. You can get compost from the municipal waste depot. They have what they call black gold there. That's the municipal compost. There's a couple companies that sell compost locally, like Greener Farms. They're a local municipal level, privately owned food scrap pickup service, and they compost their food scraps and sell it back to the community for their gardens. You can also go to Highline Mushrooms and get mushroom compost for them, or you can build a relationship with a local farmer who has animals and get their manure. You just want to make sure it's really well rotted. You can also practice low or no dig gardening. So lots of people think they need to till their soil every spring just to make a nice tilthy or fluffy planting bed. Although the results of tilling are instantaneous, you instantly get a nice planting bed. Over time, you're actually breaking down the soil structure, and the soil is going to become reliant on you tilling it in order for it to be workable. So we want to kind of emulate what happens outside in a natural ecosystem. Think of the forest floor, for example, the humus that built up over time from the detritus, the falling leaves and the dying animals and the fungus and all of the natural processes in place that break down organic matter and turn it into soil. We can do that in our own gardens by minimizing the disturbance and just adding compost over time. Of course, you don't want to use chemicals in your garden. If you're going to be growing food, you don't want to put anything in your garden that you wouldn't want to put on your plate. And then mulching, again, emulating a natural forest ecosystem where the leaves fall on the surface and kind of cover there's no exposed soil in a natural ecosystem, and there shouldn't be any exposed soil in your garden either. We want to make sure that we have some sort of mulch, whether it's wood chips or straw or even a little bit of compost over the bare soil, so that you can help with moisture retention, weed suppression. It helps make a hospitable environment for all the fungi and microbes that live in your soil. Because bare soil is exposed to all the elements and the sun, and it gets dry and cracked out. So we don't want bare soil in the garden. Oh, this picture is flipped upside down. Some of the formatting's a little funny because I had to change my presentation to a different platform last minute. So just tilt your heads to the left and you'll see a garden trellis there. Watering. So you want to water in the morning because you want your plants to have water for the whole day, the hottest part of the day. You don't want them to go through an entire hot summer day without water. You also want to water in the morning because if you water in the middle of the day, you're going to lose a lot of that water to evaporation. And if you water at nighttime, the water might not actually soak into the roots as well, and any sort of damp leaves is when you can get funguses and molds and powdery mildews and things like that creeping into your garden. So watering in the morning's best. Also, watering deeply but every few days is better than watering lightly every single day. If you think about it, if you're just watering the surface of the soil, the roots might go down as deep as the upper parts of the plant. The roots might go down as far as a foot down into the soil. So if you're only watering lightly every day, that water might not actually be getting down to the main root system. So watering deeply every few days is better. When you're first sowing seeds, you want to water just lightly over and over again with the shower setting on your hose or the sprinkler setting, so that you don't soak the seeds and they can erode away through the little channels in the soil. You want to just go lightly over and over rather than making a puddle on the soil surface. A trick I like to do, because I'm so impatient and I can't just like stand there with the hose, is I'll water the whole garden, then I'll go back and start from the beginning and water again. And by that time, the first soaking has kind of sinking into the soil a little bit, and then I'm watering again. So there's a little pro tip for you. All right, let's talk about seeds. So before I talk about how much quality matters, I just want to say, with all of the seed shortages happening, I wouldn't get so caught up in making sure that you get the best seed around, when it's best to really just use what's available to you. You can save seeds in your home garden. You can swap. There's all sorts of local Facebook groups that share seeds. You can purchase them from local growers. You can purchase them from local gardeners. We offer them through our garden club. We offer seeds through the garden club for our members to grow along with the program that we offer. And you can buy them online, but we're experiencing some serious delays in online seed orders right now. So just something to keep in mind. But if you do have the ability to purchase seeds, I would say invest in good quality seeds. Ones you can get from the dollar store and the hardware stores and stuff, sometimes are ultra hybridized and their nutrient contents aren't as high as heirloom seeds would be. And also you might be getting seeds from who knows where. So if you're buying seeds locally, you know that those varieties are regionally adapted to our climate and will do well here. So same goes with seedlings. Locally purchased and locally grown seedlings are going to be better than the ones you get from the big box garden centers, because they purchase from wholesale growers that supply and ship their plants from all over North America. So I would rather go to a local farmer who grows seedlings and maybe pay 50 cents more a plant than get one that's been wrapped up in a crate with plastic saran wrap on a transport truck that's been shipped over here from California, which is insane that they actually do that. So yeah, just like you're sourcing your food from the farmer's market, you can source your seeds and seedlings from local growers as well. All right, I think we're doing okay for time. Let's talk about growing food specifically in a vegetable garden. So this is my home garden a few years ago. It's definitely changed since then. But as you can see, I grow a little bit in ground and also in raised beds. So here are some in-ground beds. On the left, that's my work partner, Vanessa. That's her entire yard. She ripped out all the grass and it's just food. So she's super hardcore. And she grows right in the ground. Her soil was pretty clayey, but she has amended it with lots of compost over the years. Every year she adds 2 to 3 inches of compost and manure and just lightly works it in. She doesn't dig it in or till it in. She just adds it and yeah, minimizes the disturbance of the soil. She has very few weeds because of that. That's another pro of another benefit of not tilling, is that you're not bringing up old weed seeds every time you till. And on the right-hand side is my home garden. These were all established using the no-dig method. So we just cut the grass super low, put down some non-glossy cardboard, wetted the cardboard down, and then I added about 5 inches of topsoil and 2 inches of compost with some mulch pathways in between. And I never had to remove the grass. I composted the lawn right in place. And the cardboard lives long enough under the soil to suppress the grass, but eventually decomposes after a solid growing season. And I didn't have to do anything. It's just called the Lasagna Method. So that's a no-dig way to create a garden bed right in the ground. Here are raised beds. So benefits of raised beds would be ergonomics, of course. As you can see, one of our clients, lovely Claire, she's standing next to her raised bed, which is 2 feet deep. She doesn't have to bend over to water, harvest. So their previous land use was, we had identified the soil as being quite contaminated. It was inner city and it was just crappy soil. And even though you can amend it, they went for the raised beds. And you know what? Their drainage is amazing. They have a dog. The dog stays out of the garden. The raised beds do warm up slightly earlier than in-ground beds do, because the sun can hit the sides of the beds and warm up that soil earlier on in the spring. And yeah, they're also beautiful. They add a beautiful structure to the yard, like the one on the right here. It's a massive yard, and the garden just is a focal point and a hangout spot. They don't have to be big, fancy, expensive raised beds. You can grow beds simply by slapping 4 boards together. You can make them more accessible. This one's a wheelchair accessible garden on the right-hand side. Also nice for under bed storage. So we would call those elevated beds. They're even taller than raised beds, and you don't have to fill the dirt all the way to the bottom, which is a lot of soil. Okay, now let's talk about the really interesting stuff, edible landscaping. So edible landscapes are essentially landscapes with a focus on food productivity. So we're swapping out ornamental plants for food growing plants. But of course, like within any ecosystem, you want to have as much biodiversity as possible to achieve balance in the garden, because when you have balance, that's when you avoid things like pest infestations or disease and funguses and root rot and nematodes in the soil. There are natural processes in place that take care of these things when you achieve a biodiverse balance in your yard. So of course, with edible landscapes, we're also incorporating native plants. On the right-hand side here, we've replaced all of their grass with micro clover. That's not a native plant, but it's an amazing lawn alternative. Clover is in the legume family. It fixes nitrogen in the soil, so the soil's really healthy. We've got a strip of pollinators in the back here. There's pawpaw trees growing all along the side there. Lots of native wildflowers that bloom at different times of the year. And under this tree here, we have a bunch of native blueberries. They're native to more growing up towards northern Ontario. You'd find them Parry Sound and north. That's where we got those blueberries from, and they thrive in this little understory condition here in this rock garden. And of course, with the surrounding clover, they've got all the nitrogen they could ever need. And we had pine needles at the base from the neighbor's pine tree to add to the acidity. And they do well. They produce lots of food there for them. So something to remember is that you don't have to start from scratch. You can incorporate plants into the existing landscape, and you can swap out edible plants for the ornamental plants in there. So along this client's shed here, they had a bunch of Rose of Sharon, which is a lovely flowering plant. But they wanted to grow food there. So we took out the Rose of Sharon and we added raspberries, and only one season later, they're already harvesting raspberries from that patch. So it still fills in the hedge quite nicely. There's still flowers and blooms, but they also get to eat from it as well. This is a strip in Walkerville. Sarah, this is Ellery's former stepdad, Matthew. I don't know if you've ever met him. This is Matthew's property.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, I have met him. That's funny. Are those pawpaw trees too?
These are pawpaws, yeah. So he came to me with this strip here. It was kind of troubling to him. He hates cutting this grass because the rest of his yard is landscaped. He just had this awkward little strip of grass, and he had these pawpaw trees. He's been living in this house for almost 7 years, and they've never produced anything, which is pretty common for fruit trees to not produce anything in the first 5 years of their life. But these trees are way older than when he's moved there. They've been there for years, and they've never produced anything. So I was suspecting that their roots were suffocating from the thatch of grass. So what we did was we got a utility locate just to make sure we weren't going to be hitting any lines because it's in the front yard. And we tore out all the grass and we replaced it with compost, wood chips, and a bunch of flowering plants. And you can see how much growth these trees have experienced just after one season. This was taken in 2018. So now these trees are huge. And actually, I should show you guys. Hold on. I got a whole freezer bag of pawpaws from his trees. So he has so many, he needs to give them away to me. I swear he pays me money too, but I do take pawpaws as payment. So they're super productive now. All 3 trees are producing. It may have been a coincidence, but I believe that the trees can breathe a lot more. We've planted a lot of guild plants, which help kind of mine nutrients from deep in the soil and bring them up to the surface. Plants like comfrey, we have lupins in there to fix nitrogen. We have alliums to deter pests. We have lots of native plants to attract pollinators, which pawpaws need to fruit. So there's a whole little mini ecosystem here. We call this a fruit tree guild. It's a guild of plants that work together to support the production of the fruit trees. Oh shoot, here's another picture that got quite stretched, but in this edible landscape, we've got the pawpaws, berry bushes, perennial foods like asparagus, strawberries, and rhubarb. And we've also tucked in a few annuals within the landscape as well. They fit nicely in there, and you're just kind of sneaking in food where you can. If you're interested in growing food at home, but you don't know where to start, I encourage you to look into the Ground Culture Garden Club. This is our program that we're running for the second year in a row. It's an online course, and we also provide seeds, seedlings, compost, fertilizer, and support all season long. So if you're interested in growing food this year, but you want a little bit of help, please reach out and we'd be happy to talk to you a little bit more about how we can help you. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you guys might have about gardening or edible landscaping. I think I should somehow switch the presentation back to Corey so that you can read me the questions, unless I can find them somewhere.
I'll pull them up for here if we. Okay. Yeah. So, can everybody hear me? Can you hear me, Brandi?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, we'll open it up to questions now. So you can either in Zoom, you can raise your hand in the button at the bottom, or just unmute yourself and go ahead and ask it, or add it to the chat and I'll read it off to Brandi. Anybody have any questions?
Any questions? I'm happy to answer anything. I can't even see the chat.
Okay, well, that's okay. I know I have one to get started here while we're waiting.
Okay.
How do you deal with shade? So, I notice a lot of these areas are nice and sunny. Is there anything that you recommend doing for shaded areas?
Yeah, I mean, I grow a lot of native plants in shady gardens, a lot of woodland gardens, because we have here in the Carolinian forest, of course, such an amazing variety of plants that are already adapted to growing in understory and forest floor conditions. So there are quite a few plants you can grow in the shade. When you go to nurseries like Maidstone Tree Farm or Provincial Nursery, you can look specifically for their shade sections. Usually they group them in sections. But also one of my favorite resources is a website called Ontario Native Plants. I think the actual website is ON Native Plants, and they ship little seedlings to your door. They're here in Southern Ontario, and you can look up by category plants there for shade, and they even have the filter for you to look up edible native plants for the shade. So yeah, like blueberries are one of them. They thrive in the sun, but they can handle partial shade. Same with strawberries. There's a woodland strawberry, which is adapted more to shadier conditions. And then as far as annual vegetables go and grow, you can grow root vegetables in the shade. So carrots, radishes, beets. You can probably get away with like 4 hours of sunlight a day for them. And same with any of your leafy greens like spinach and lettuces. You can grow those in shade as well. You just want to avoid the heat-loving crops like peppers and tomatoes. They need 6 hours minimum.
Great. Okay, that helps definitely. I know I've actually ordered some of the plants from Ontario Native Plants. So
have you?
That's great.
Yeah, hostas actually I used to hate hostas because they were so overused in landscapes. You just see them everywhere, and it was kind of like the boring go-to for shade gardens. But I've come to love hostas because I realized that their foliage is beautiful. It's undeniable that their big flat leaves are pretty. They send up flowers, which there's always bees buzzing around the flowers. They smell lovely, and you can eat hosta shoots in the spring.
Wow.
Just like asparagus. So they grow in full shade pretty much. So that's a nice one to kind of fill in a shady area.
Excellent. Okay. Well, Kathy's got her hand up here.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, like, what's too early to water flowers? Like you said, to water them in the morning.
Too early in the morning?
Yeah. What's too early?
I wouldn't put a time limit on it. You must be an early riser if you're worried about watering them too early.
No, I have sprinklers, so.
I see. Yeah, I mean, the idea of not watering them at nighttime is that you just want to set your plants up so that the soil is wet to get them through the hot part of the day. You don't want water sitting on the leaves at nighttime. So watering them at like 8 o'clock at night is not ideal. But if you're watering them at like 6 in the morning, that's totally fine because the sun is inevitably going to come out, dry those leaves, and the soil will have moisture in it for the hottest part of the day.
Yeah, it's in the morning, but I think, I don't know, it might be, I might have it set for 5. I don't know. I can't
That's
remember.
fine.
Yeah.
Especially in the summer when the sun rises so early.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
Okay.
All right. Jessica has a question.
Go ahead, Jessica.
Oh, it's Andy.
Hey,
Oh,
Actually.
it's Andy. It was showing Jessica's name. So.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you. It might be. I don't know if it's a dumb question, but we do tomatoes when we do our garden, and you know, Brandi, is it okay to let them just fall down on the ground? I know they get rotted sometimes, but you definitely have to raise them, right? Like you know, it seems like ours would keep growing like a meter high.
Yeah, so there's 2 different kinds of tomatoes. There's determinate and indeterminate. And it's easy to remember because indeterminate means it's not determined how high they'll get. They'll keep going. Whereas determinate means they'll stay a certain height. And those require less support. They're easier to manage if you can find determinate tomatoes. Often just one of those cages, like a classic tomato cage will do. It just kind of supports the branches. And the indeterminate ones, you can give them like a 6-foot tall trellis and they'll keep going. You can chop off the top to prevent them from shooting up and promote them to put out bushier growth. But you actually do want to keep the leaves and the branches away from the soil because tomatoes are particularly susceptible to disease. And water from the plant drips down to the lowest branches. It pushes them to the soil. Any splashing off the soil when it rains gets onto the leaves, and that's when you experience blight and other tomato diseases. So I would say try and lift them off the ground. I mean, my tomatoes turn into a jungle mid-season anyway. I'm just so busy tending to other people's gardens. And I still get tomatoes out of them, but you definitely have more productivity if you keep them off the soil. And you can even break off or clip off the branches that are like within the bottom, I don't know, foot of the plant so that they're not touching the soil.
Thanks.
Yep, no problem.
Okay. There's a question from Ellen.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to ask about compost. I have an older garden and I've composted it like over 25 years and there's still a lot of clay. But I was thinking of using some kind of wood chips, possibly cedar, and I wonder if you would recommend that or not for a vegetable garden.
Do you want to use them in your pathways or actually on top of the soil where you'll be growing your annual plants?
Well, I would probably put it around them, but it's obviously going to get worked into the soil, right?
The
So,
wood chips, I see. Well, the wood chips would have a really high carbon content. So you'd want to make sure you're putting in a nice dose of compost and manure to kind of balance the greens and the browns as far as, you know, if you're breaking down compost into simple terms of greens and browns. Putting wood chips into the soil would be putting a lot of browns in there. So you can even put grass clippings or vegetable garden scraps in there as well. But I don't know, I wouldn't really mix wood chips into the garden just because they're so coarse, they're so big. But you can get really finely shredded leaf mulch or even the finely shredded wood chip mulch. But yeah, the solid like bark nuggets and stuff, I probably wouldn't use that right in the vegetable garden.
thank you.
The bigger the pieces, like the little bark pieces and whatnot, the more pests can harbor under there. So you want to make sure you have really fine, well broken down particles that you're mixing into your soil.
Yeah, because that's the issue here. Like everything grows, but when you have an older garden, I get a lot of things like viruses and different, plant diseases, and I don't use any kind of pesticides. So we try to figure out ways to not grow things in the same spot, but it's
Yeah,
not a big garden. Yeah. So, okay, that's good advice. I'll try with the finer wood, maybe. That's good.
Yeah, I get really finely shredded stuff. You can get cedar. Cedar's the most expensive. Canada Red is nice because it sounds like it's red, but that's just referring to red pine. And it's really finely shredded, almost like paper, and you can sift that in if you needed to.
Okay, thank you.
There's a question in the chat from Joan. What do you think of soaker hoses?
Yeah, they do the job. I mean, it's nice because you can set them on a timer or you can weave them around the base of your plant and just let them go. It's nice because they do a slow release of water over time instead of standing there. So it definitely saves time. You just have to make sure that you're putting the hose close enough to the base of the plant so that it's actually getting the water where it needs to go, because the hoses can shift around. And as long as you have them right against the base of the plants that you're watering, then I think soaker hoses are pretty convenient.
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
Well, thanks so much, everybody. It was a pleasure chatting with you all. And if you do have any questions afterwards and you can't think of them now, but they pop into your head later, we're always happy to answer them, either over on our social medias or via email.
Actually, I think Kathy, do you have another question?
Yeah, just one more. You were saying that somebody picks up your compost. Is that in the Essex County area? Were you talking?
Yeah, their company is called Greener Farms. You can
Greener
look them
Farms?
up. Yeah, they do municipal compost pickup.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Just last chance here. Okay. Well, I just want to say thank you very much, Brandi. Really informative, great presentation. Really appreciate you taking the time. Yeah, so learned a lot tonight. Thank you very much again. And thank you everyone for joining tonight. That concludes tonight's presentation.